"You're not invited to my company retreat," my wife said, packing lingerie I'd never seen. She took her boss instead. When she arrived at the luxury resort, a gift basket waited. "Welcome, new majority shareholder's wife," with MY name underneath. She had no idea I'd owned her company for months. "My name is Nathan Blackwood. I'm 47 years old, and I've been married to Claire for 14 years. For most of that time, I thought we were building something together. She was ambitious, driven, climbing the corporate ladder at TechFront Solutions with the kind of determination I admired. I supported every late night, every business trip, every sacrifice she said would pay off eventually. What I didn't realize was that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped climbing with me and started climbing over me. The retreat was scheduled for that weekend, Thursday through Sunday, at some luxury resort in the Rockies, the kind of place that charges by the view. Claire packed Wednesday night, methodical and efficient. I watched from the doorway as she folded clothes I didn't recognize, elegant pieces that had never made an appearance at home. New wardrobe. I asked. "Professional investment," she replied without missing a beat. First impressions matter. She wasn't packing for me anymore. She was packing for him, for Victor Rhodes, the silver-haired CEO with the corner office and the reputation for blurring professional lines. I'd met him twice at company functions. Both times, his hand had lingered too long on Claire's lower back, his laugh too quick at her rehearsed jokes. Thursday morning, she kissed my cheek on her way out, the gesture so automatic it barely registered as contact. "Don't wait up," she said, already halfway to the door. I didn't. Instead, I opened the safe in my office, the one Claire had forgotten existed, and pulled out a leather folder. Inside were documents I'd been preparing for 6 months, ever since the night I'd overheard her phone call in the garage, the one where she'd laughed and said, "He doesn't suspect a thing." She was right about one thing. The retreat wasn't my scene, but the shareholders' meeting scheduled for Monday morning. That was exactly where I needed to be. The first time I knew something was truly wrong wasn't the late nights or the changed passwords. It was silence. Claire used to talk about everything, dissecting every office interaction like it was a chess match worth analyzing. I joked that she could turn a water cooler conversation into a 3-act drama. But 6 months ago, that stopped. The stories became summaries, polished and vague, like quarterly reports stripped of anything human. She'd mention meetings, but not the people. Projects, but not the problems. It was like watching someone slowly erase themselves from our shared life. The shift started right when Victor Rhodes took over as CEO. Charismatic, ruthless, the kind of man who wore power like cologne. I'd seen his type before, executives who confused authority with permission. Claire started coming home later, her explanations growing more elaborate even as they said less. "Victor wants me to lead the digital transformation initiative," she'd said one night, pouring wine I hadn't seen her buy. "It's a huge opportunity." "That's great," I'd replied, meaning it then. "What does it involve?" "Strategy sessions, stakeholder alignment, change management." The corporate jargon flowed easily, a wall of professional language designed to sound impressive while revealing nothing. Lots of late nights ahead. She wasn't wrong about that part. I started noticing the small things first. New perfume, expensive, nothing like what she usually wore. Restaurant charges on our credit card for places we'd never been together. Instagram photos from Victor's account, Claire in the background of team celebrations I'd never heard about. Then came the phone. She'd always been casual about it, leaving on the counter while she showered, answering calls on speaker while cooking. Suddenly, it was password protected, always face down, always within reach. When I asked about it, she'd smile that patient smile. "Company security policy, Nathan. We handle sensitive information. IT requires everyone to update their protocols." Plausible. Professional. Complete lie. The real confirmation came 3 months ago. I'd gotten home early from a consulting job that wrapped up ahead of schedule. Her car was in the garage, but the house felt empty, that particular silence that meant no one was expecting you. I'd walked upstairs to change and heard her voice from our bedroom, low and careful. "No, he's at a client site until 6, she was saying. "We have time." I'd frozen in the hallway, my hand on the doorframe. "I know it's risky," she continued, laughing softly. "But that's part of the appeal, isn't it? The thrill of getting away with something." I'd backed away silently, gone to my office, closed the door. Sat there for 20 minutes trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. I knew exactly what I'd heard. That night, I started building my case. Not emotionally, not with confrontations or accusations. Methodically, the way you'd approach any serious problem. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Cho who specialized in asset protection. Started reviewing our financial documents, the ones Claire had stopped asking about years ago. Traced the paper trail of trusts and holdings she'd signed off on without reading, assuming I was just being thorough. "You've been planning this a while," Patricia had said during our second meeting, impressed despite herself. "Not planning," I'd corrected. "Preparing. There's a difference." Now, with Claire at her mountain retreat with Victor, I sat in my office reviewing the final documents. The company she thought Victor controlled. I'd quietly purchased 62% of the shares over the past 4 months through a series of shell companies and private transactions. The board she thought supported her. I'd been meeting with them individually for weeks, laying groundwork, building consensus. Claire thought she was climbing the ladder. She didn't realize I'd been repositioning it the entire time. 3 years ago, when things were still good between us, Claire had introduced me to her best friend Rachel Simmons. They'd been close since college, the kind of friendship built on shared secrets and late-night conversations. Rachel was sharp, funny, brutally honest in a way Claire used to be before corporate polish smoothed out her edges. "If you ever need anything," Rachel had told me at her Christmas party that year, "and I mean anything, you call me." Claire's like a sister, but so are you now. I'd appreciated the sentiment then. I need it more than I knew. 2 months ago, after I confirmed my suspicions about Claire and Victor, I'd met Rachel for coffee. Not at our usual spots, but at a quiet place across town where no one would recognize us. "I need to ask you something difficult," I'd started, watching her face carefully. "And I need you to be honest with me." Rachel had set down her cup, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "Nathan, what's going on? Has Claire said anything to you about Victor Rhodes?" The pause was all the confirmation I needed, but Rachel's response was careful. "She's mentioned working closely with him." "Why?" "Because I think there's more to it than work." I pulled out my phone, showed her the credit card statements, the hotel charges, the pattern of lies. "And I think you already know." Rachel had closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. When she opened them again, there were tears forming. I told her to stop. I told her she was throwing away something real for something that would destroy her. She wouldn't listen. "How long have you known?" "For months." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but she's my best friend, and I kept hoping she'd come to her senses." I'd reached across the table, taken her hand. "I'm not angry with you, Rachel, but I need your help with something. Something that might be uncomfortable." That's when I'd explained my plan. Claire had suggested to test herself. Months ago, back when she was still playing the role of concerned wife. She'd accused me of being distant, emotionally unavailable, claimed I wasn't invested in our marriage anymore. In one of our arguments, she'd actually said, "I bet you wouldn't even care if another woman showed interest in you." So I decided to find out if she cared. Rachel had agreed, reluctantly at first. Then, with growing conviction once she understood what Claire had become. The plan was simple. Rachel would visit our house on a Friday evening when Claire was working late, supposedly to drop off some books. She'd dress attractively, be subtly flirtatious, see how I responded. What Rachel didn't know was that I'd installed security cameras throughout the house 2 weeks earlier, hidden but comprehensive. Claire thought they were just for security, didn't know they were recording continuously, streaming to cloud storage she couldn't access. The evening arrived. Rachel showed up at 7, wearing a dress that was elegant but suggestive, her makeup done carefully. She played her part well, touching my arm when she laughed, standing closer than necessary, making comments that could be innocent or loaded, depending on interpretation. We'd talked for an hour, moved from the foyer to the living room, and then she'd made her move, leaning in as if to kiss me. I'd stepped back, gently but firmly. "Rachel, stop," I'd said clearly, making sure my words were captured by the camera. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I love my wife. I made vows, and I keep them, even when she doesn't." Rachel had stepped back, and something in her expression shifted from performance to genuine emotion. "She doesn't deserve you, Nathan." "Maybe not, but that's not why I stay faithful. I do it because it's who I am." The footage was perfect, indisputable evidence that when given the opportunity, I'd chosen loyalty. Now, as Claire prepared to spend the weekend with Victor, I had proof of both her betrayal and my integrity. Patricia, my attorney, had watched the video with professional detachment. This is good. Very good. It establishes moral high ground and rebuts any claim she might make about mutual infidelity. But it was more than legal strategy. It was a reminder to myself that I wasn't sinking to her level, that there were still lines I wouldn't cross. Even in war, honor matters. Claire stepped out of the car at the Rocky Ridge Resort with the confidence of someone who believed the universe arranged itself for her convenience. The mountain air was crisp, the scenery magazine perfect, the kind of place where powerful people made powerful decisions. The driver held her door open, smiling professionally. "Courtesy of Mr. Blackwood, ma'am." She barely registered it, already assuming it was Victor's doing, another one of his gestures of favoritism. That's how their relationship worked now, she thought. She made herself indispensable, and he rewarded her with access, with opportunities, with attention that felt like love, but was really just mutual exploitation. She didn't even question which Blackwood the driver meant. The resort was stunning, all timber and glass and stone, the kind of architecture that costs more than most people's houses. Claire walked through the lobby with purpose, heels clicking against marble, drawing eyes the way she'd learned to do. Power was partly competence and partly performance, and she'd mastered both. The concierge directed her to the executive floor, where the premium suites overlooked the valley. She'd expected Victor to meet her there, maybe already with champagne poured, that predatory smile he wore when he thought he'd won something. But the suite was empty when she entered. Quiet, luxurious, perfect, and completely wrong. Rose petals were scattered across the king bed in a pattern that spelled something she couldn't quite make out. A bottle of wine was breathing on the bar. Expensive, the kind with a label that required pronunciation guides. On the coffee table sat a wooden box, elegant and heavy, with an engraved gold plate on the lid. She picked it up, read the inscription, "To the wife of our new majority shareholder." Claire laughed, a short, confused sound. Some kind of mistake, obviously. She opened the box. Inside was a single cream card, heavy stock, with familiar handwriting. Her husband's handwriting. "Enjoy the view. Nathan." Her smile vanished. She turned slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The mountain range stretched out beyond the glass, breathtaking and vast. She wasn't breathing at all. The television mounted on the wall flickered to life automatically, synced to the room's keycard entry. The resort's welcome screen displayed an elegant script. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. Executive Penthouse Suite." She stared at the screen, waiting for it to correct itself, to show Victor's name, to make sense. It didn't change. Her phone was in her hand before she decided to move, dialing the front desk with shaking fingers. "Front desk. How may I assist you, Mrs. Blackwood?" "There's been a mistake," Claire said, her voice tight. "This suite, the reservation, it's wrong." "I'm sorry, ma'am." The concierge sounded genuinely confused. Mr. Blackwood finalized all arrangements personally. The executive suite was booked 3 weeks ago under his account, with your name listed as his spouse and partner. "Which Mr. Blackwood?" she demanded. "Nathan Blackwood, ma'am. He specified that every detail should be perfect for your arrival." She ended the call, her hand trembling. The room felt smaller suddenly, the luxury oppressive. She walked to the closet, found her luggage already unpacked, her clothes hanging precisely. But there was something else there too, something that didn't belong. A framed photograph. Her and Nathan, from their 5th anniversary dinner. Her hand on his chest, both of them smiling, back when smiles between them were still real. She'd removed this photo from her office 6 months ago. It didn't fit the narrative she was building. Now it was here, in this room, staring at her like an accusation. A knock on the door made her jump. She opened it to find Victor, grinning, holding champagne like a trophy. Behind him, a bellhop waited with a cart. "Ready to make this weekend count?" Victor asked, stepping forward. He stopped when he saw her face, then looked past her into the suite. The rose petals, the wine, the welcome message still glowing on the TV screen. "What the hell is this?" Victor's voice had lost its confidence. The bellhop cleared his throat politely. "Excuse me, ma'am. Shall I move your belongings to Mr. Blackwood's suite now?" He requested that you be more comfortable with your things nearby. Victor's head snapped toward the bellhop. What suite? The executive penthouse, sir. Mr. Blackwood reserved it 3 weeks ago as the primary shareholder. The bellhop's smile was professional, practiced, like he'd delivered this line before. He owns 62% of TechFront Solutions as of Monday. Didn't you know? The champagne bottle in Victor's hand suddenly looked very heavy. Monday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that follows storms. I'd spent the weekend reviewing documents, confirming votes, making sure every piece was positioned exactly where it needed to be. Patricia had called twice to verify details, her professional excitement barely contained. This is airtight, Nathan, she'd said. I've never seen preparation like this. The TechFront Solutions boardroom was on the 15th floor, all glass and steel, and the carefully curated appearance of innovation. I arrived 30 minutes early, wearing the charcoal suit Claire had once called boring but professional. Boring worked fine for what I needed today. 5 of the 7 board members were already there when I entered. Gregory Mills, the CFO, stood to shake my hand. Nathan, good to finally meet you properly. Gregory, I replied. Thanks for taking the time to review the materials I sent. Materials. He laughed, not unkindly. You sent us a roadmap. 3 of us stayed up until midnight going through your analysis. The others filtered in. Patricia Vance from legal. Thomas Riggs, who'd been with the company since its founding. Diane Foster, representing the venture capital firm that had invested early. Kenneth Park, the independent director. And finally, Victor Rhodes, looking like a man who'd already lost but hadn't accepted it yet. Claire wasn't there. I'd specifically requested through channels that her presence wasn't required for this particular meeting. Let her wonder. Let her wait. Victor took his seat at the head of the table, the CEO's traditional position. He dressed for power, expensive suit, designer tie, the whole performance. But there was something in his eyes that betrayed him, a wariness that said he knew the ground had shifted. Let's begin, Victor said, trying to control the room's energy. I understand Nathan Blackwood has requested this emergency session, though I'm not sure why a shareholder meeting requires the CEO's time on a Monday morning. Majority shareholder, Thomas Riggs corrected quietly. Nathan now controls 62% of the company's voting shares. Victor's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten on the arm of his chair. That's a significant development. When were you planning to disclose this? Right now, I said, standing. I'd prepared a presentation, clean and factual, no unnecessary drama. As of last Friday, through a series of legitimate transactions approved by the appropriate regulatory bodies, I've acquired majority control of TechFront Solutions. I walked them through it. The timeline, the shell companies, the careful accumulation of shares from investors who were quietly losing faith in Victor's leadership. The financial irregularities I'd uncovered. Nothing criminal, but enough to raise questions. The HR complaints that have been buried, including 3 separate incidents involving Victor and female employees. Claire wasn't mentioned specifically. Not yet. But everyone in that room knew. Diane Foster spoke first. Nathan, what are your intentions here? Are you looking to liquidate? Restructure? Neither. I'm looking to stabilize. I pulled up the next slide, showing profit trends, innovation metrics, employee satisfaction scores, all declining over the past 8 months. Since Victor became CEO, this company has lost focus. I intend to restore it. By removing me, Victor said flatly. By installing leadership that prioritizes the company over personal interests, I corrected. Your employment contract includes a morality clause. I have documentation of violations that would justify immediate termination. Patricia Vance leaned forward. What kind of documentation? I've been waiting for this question. I distributed folders, one to each board member except Victor. Inside were printed emails, hotel receipts, expense reports that showed a pattern of inappropriate relationships with subordinates. Claire's name appeared throughout, but so did 2 other women's names, both of whom had left the company abruptly. This is a witch hunt, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. This is due diligence, Thomas Riggs replied, flipping through the documents. Nathan, you've been thorough. I learned from my wife, I said, meeting Victor's eyes. She taught me that details matter. Documentation matters. Building a case matters. The vote took 15 minutes. 6 in favor of removing Victor as CEO, 1 abstention from Kenneth Park, who said he needed more time to review. Victor himself didn't get a vote on his own termination. He'd stood slowly, straightened his tie. "This isn't over, Nathan." "Yes, it is," I'd replied. "Security will escort you out. Your access has been revoked as of this moment." After Victor left, the room had exhaled collectively. Then Gregory Mills had asked the question I'd been expecting. "What about Claire?" Claire's office was on the 12th floor, corner space with windows overlooking the city. She'd fought for that view, negotiated it as part of her last promotion. I'd celebrated with her, taken her to dinner, listened to her talk about what it meant to finally have a seat at the table. Now she was about to lose the chair. I'd asked Patricia to handle the official notification, but I wanted to be there when it happened. Not out of cruelty, but because some conversations required presence. Claire was at her desk when we arrived, typing furiously on her laptop. She looked up, saw me standing in her doorway, with Patricia Cho beside me, and something in her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside. Patricia closed the door behind us. "If this is about the retreat, I can explain," Claire started, but I held up my hand. "No more explanations. No more stories that explain nothing." I pulled out a chair, sat down across from her desk like I was a client and she was pitching me services. "I'm here in my capacity as majority shareholder of this company. Patricia is here as legal counsel." The color drained from Claire's face. "Majority shareholder? What are you talking about?" Patricia opened her briefcase, pulled out documents. As of Friday evening, Nathan Blackwood acquired 62% of TechFront Solutions voting shares. This morning, the board voted to remove Victor Rhodes as CEO. "You're being placed on immediate administrative leave, pending investigation into violations of company policy." "Investigation?" Claire's voice rose. "For what?" "Undisclosed personal relationships with senior executives," Patricia said clinically. "Specifically with Victor Rhodes. Company policy requires disclosure of any romantic or intimate relationships that could create conflicts of interest. You signed that policy 3 years ago." Claire looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Real emotion, not curated or calculated. "Nathan, please. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said quietly. "I know about the hotel rooms, the dinners, the retreat you didn't invite me to. I know Victor booked adjoining suites for you. I know you've been planning to leave me once you secured your position." "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough to prepare." I stood, pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket, placed it on her desk. "Divorce papers. I'm filing on grounds of adultery. You'll find the evidence is comprehensive." She opened the envelope with shaking hands, scanned the first few pages. Her face went through several expressions, settling on something between shock and disbelief. "You're taking everything." "I'm taking what's mine," I corrected. "The house is in a family trust that predates our marriage. Your shares in this company include conduct clauses that you violated. The retirement accounts were separated 2 years ago when you signed off on tax restructuring. You were too busy to read the documents. Remember," Patricia added, "you'll retain your personal savings and your vehicle. The prenuptial agreement you signed stipulates that marital assets acquired through inheritance or held in trust remain with the original owner. Nathan's been very generous under the circumstances." "Generous?" Claire's laugh was bitter. "You're destroying my career, taking my home, and you call that generous?" "I'm enforcing consequences," I said, standing. "You made choices, Claire. I'm just making sure you live with them." "What about Victor?" she asked, grasping. "He'll fight this. He has lawyers." "Victor was escorted from the building an hour ago. His employment is terminated. He's not coming to save you." I moved toward the door, then paused. "You know what the saddest part is? I would have given you everything willingly. All you had to do was be honest. But you chose deception, and deception has costs." Patricia handed Claire a business card. "You have 3 days to respond to the divorce filing. I suggest you find counsel." We left her there, sitting at her desk in her corner office with windows overlooking a city that suddenly looked very far away. In the elevator, Patricia had said, "You held up well in there." "I had to," I replied. She needed to see that I wasn't broken. That betrayal didn't destroy me. It just revealed who we both really were. The doors opened to the lobby, and I walked out into afternoon sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in months. 3 days after the board meeting, I received a package in my office. No return address, just my name typed on a plain label. Inside was a medical file, photocopied, with a handwritten note clipped to the front. You deserve to know the whole truth. R.S. Rachel Simmons. I recognized her initials immediately. The file was from a private clinic in Portland, dated 7 years ago. I almost didn't open it, sensing that what was inside would change something fundamental. But I'd committed to knowing everything, to facing reality without flinching. So I read it. The document was a surgical consent form for permanent sterilization. Tubal ligation, the medical term said. Patient name, Claire Elizabeth Hartley. That was her maiden name before we married. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. 7 years ago, 2 years before our wedding. She'd gotten the procedure when she was 35 and then married me at 37, knowing I wanted children. Knowing and never telling me. I remember the conversations we'd had, the ones where she'd blamed stress, blamed timing, suggested we wait until her career stabilized. I've been patient, believing we had time, believing she wanted the same future I did. Every month when nothing happened, she'd looked disappointed, had held my hand and said, maybe next month. It was all performance. Carefully calculated deception. My phone rang. Rachel's number. Did you get it? She asked without preamble. I got it. I confirmed, my voice steadier than I felt. How did you find this? Claire told me about it years ago, back when we were still honest with each other. She said children would destroy her career trajectory, that she couldn't compete with the men in her field if she took maternity leave. Rachel's voice was tight with anger. When you two got married, I asked her if she'd told you. She said you'd figure out eventually and accept it, that you were too soft to leave her over it. Too soft. The words landed like stones. She was wrong, I said quietly. I know. That's why I sent you the file. You needed to know it wasn't biology that kept you childless. It was her choice, her lie. Rachel paused. I'm sorry, Nathan. She was my best friend, but what she did to you was unforgivable. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the city through the window. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago, hopeful and trusting, and the man I'd become, careful and guarded. Claire had taught me that lesson, though not the one she'd intended. The medical file went into the folder with everything else. Evidence for the divorce proceedings, documentation of systematic deception. Patricia would include it in our filing, another layer of justification for why Claire deserved nothing beyond what the law minimally required. But more than that, it was closure, confirmation that my instincts had been right, that the marriage I'd been trying to save had been built on lies from the very beginning. I'd wanted children. Claire had known that, had promised me that future, and had made it impossible while pretending to share my disappointment. That particular betrayal cut deeper than the affair with Victor, because it had lasted longer, been more calculated. That evening, I called my lawyer. Patricia, I have additional documentation for the divorce filing. What kind of documentation? She asked. Proof that Claire underwent sterilization before our marriage and never disclosed it. I have medical records. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Nathan, that's significant. That goes to fraudulent inducement to marry in some jurisdictions. How long have you known? About 6 hours, I admitted. Rachel sent it to me. The friend who helped with the fidelity test. The same. She's cutting ties with Claire completely. Good. We'll add this to the filing. Combined with everything else, this paints a picture of sustained deception. Patricia's voice softened slightly. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said, and meant it. Every truth that comes out makes it easier to walk away. That's healthy, actually. Some men in your position would spiral. I'm not some men, I replied. I'm just someone who's done being lied to. The business press picked up the story within a week. TechFront Solutions undergoes leadership shakeup, read the headline in the industry journal. The article was carefully neutral, mentioning Victor's departure and board restructuring without naming specific reasons. But the tech community is small, and rumors travel faster than official statements. By day 3, blind items appeared on industry gossip sites. Which recently ousted CEO was terminated for inappropriate relationships with subordinates. One site speculated. Another was more direct. Silicon Valley executive loses position after affair with married VP surfaces. Claire tried to control the narrative. She posted on LinkedIn about pursuing new opportunities and exciting next chapters, the standard euphemisms people use when they're fired. The comments were supportive at first, colleagues offering generic well wishes and connection requests. Then someone leaked the details. I don't know who did it. Could have been someone from HR, a board member, even Victor himself trying to spread the blame. But suddenly the full story was out there. The affair, the retreat, the majority shareholder husband who'd orchestrated a corporate takeover to protect his interests. Claire's LinkedIn post got a different kind of attention then. Comments disappeared as people quietly distanced themselves. Connection requests were withdrawn. Her professional network, so carefully cultivated, began to dissolve. The breaking point came when a business blogger wrote a detailed analysis titled, "When Personal Choices Destroy Professional Credibility, a Case Study." The piece didn't use names, but the details were specific enough that everyone knew. It discussed corporate ethics, conflicts of interest, and what happens when executives prioritize personal advancement over professional integrity. The article went viral in business circles. 20,000 shares in 2 days. Claire called me once, her voice raw in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Nathan, please. Make it stop. Talk to someone. I'm being destroyed publicly." "I haven't said anything publicly," I replied truthfully. "I've given no interviews, made no statements. Whatever's happening is a consequence of your actions becoming known." "You leaked it." "You must have." "I didn't." "But Claire, think about how many people knew. The board, HR, Victor's assistant, your colleagues who suspected, the hotel staff at the resort. You created this situation in full view of dozens of witnesses. Did you really think it would stay quiet?" Her silence was answer enough. "This is what accountability looks like," I continued. "Not revenge, not cruelty. Just the natural result of choices you made being known by the people they affect." "I've lost everything," she whispered. "No, you've lost the things you took for granted. Your reputation, your position, your marriage. Those were built on trust and competence. When you destroyed one and compromised the other, this is what remained." She ended the call without responding. 2 days later, I received a message from a recruiter I knew casually. "Heard about your situation. If you're looking for consulting opportunities, several firms are interested in your expertise. Your reputation in the industry is solid." That was the difference between us, I realized. Claire's professional identity had been built on perception and politics. Mine was built on actual skill and integrity. When the foundation shook, hers collapsed while mine held firm. The following week, a young executive I'd mentored years ago reached out. Thomas Brennan, now VP at a competing firm. "Nathan, I heard what happened. I just wanted to say that a lot of us in the industry have tremendous respect for how you handled it. Professional, legal, dignified. That takes strength. Thank you, Thomas. That means more than you know. I also wanted to mention, we're looking for someone to lead our strategic initiatives division. I know you've got tech front to manage, but if you're interested in conversations down the line, the door's open." Opportunities were opening for me while closing for Claire. Not because I'd orchestrated it that way, but because the industry valued what I represented. Competence, ethics, follow through. The same traits Claire had dismissed as boring now became the foundation for my next chapter. Justice, I was learning, wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was just the quiet accumulation of consequences, the natural result of truth becoming known. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late October. 18 weeks after I discovered the full extent of Claire's deception, we sat in a downtown courtroom that smelled of old wood and quiet desperation. Claire arrived with her attorney, a nervous young man named Brad Stevens who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He'd taken the case after 3 other lawyers had declined, once they'd seen the evidence Patricia had compiled. Patricia sat beside me, composed and ready. We'd prepared thoroughly, though we both knew the outcome was essentially predetermined. Claire had nothing to negotiate with, no leverage, no sympathetic facts. Judge Margaret Thornhill reviewed the documents for several minutes, her expression neutral but her attention sharp. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Stevens, I've reviewed your client's petition for reconsideration of the settlement terms. On what grounds are you requesting modification?" Brad stood, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, Mrs. Blackwood contends that the division of assets is inequitable given the length of the marriage and her contributions to the household." Contributions. Judge Thornhill's eyebrow raised slightly. Mr. Blackwood maintained the household finances, paid the mortgage from a trust established before the marriage, and has documented evidence that Mrs. Blackwood used marital funds to support an extramarital affair. What contributions specifically are you referencing? Brad faltered. Emotional support, Your Honor. Partnership. Partnership that included documented infidelity, fraudulent misrepresentation regarding fertility, and violations of professional ethics that cost her employment. The judge's tone was dry. Ms. Cho, do you have anything to add? Patricia stood smoothly. Only that Mr. Blackwood has been more than generous. Mrs. Blackwood retains her personal savings, her vehicle, and no debt. The prenuptial agreement she signed is being enforced exactly as written. Judge Thornhill nodded, made a notation. The settlement stands as proposed. Mrs. Blackwood, you entered this marriage under false pretenses and violated your marital vows. Mr. Blackwood has grounds for a fault-based divorce and has chosen to be merciful in his terms. I suggest you accept that mercy. Claire's face had gone pale. She whispered something to Brad, who shook his head helplessly. Divorce is granted, Judge Thornhill said, signing the papers. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Claire caught up with me on the steps. Patricia had gone ahead to file the final documents, leaving us alone for the first time in months. Nathan, wait, Claire said. I turned, looked at her properly. She lost weight, I noticed. Her suit was expensive but hung wrong, like she'd bought it for someone else's body. The confidence that had once defined her had been stripped away, leaving something smaller and sadder. What do you want, Claire? I want to say I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for calculation. All I saw was exhaustion. I believe you're sorry, I said quietly. Sorry it ended this way. Sorry you got caught. Sorry you lost everything. But I don't think you're sorry for what you did. Just for how it turned out. That's not fair, she whispered. Fair. I almost laughed. You lied about wanting children. You had an affair with your boss. You tried to gaslight me into thinking I was paranoid. And now you want to talk about fair? She looked away, tears forming. I loved you once. I did. Maybe. But you loved your ambition more. You loved the image of success more. And when I stopped fitting that image, you stopped seeing me as a person. I adjusted my coat, preparing to leave. Goodbye, Claire. I hope you figure out who you are without the titles and the performance. But that's not my problem anymore. I walked away without looking back. 14 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in the conference room of Sterling and Associates, the consulting firm I joined as a partner. The view overlooked the waterfront, ships moving slowly through the harbor, carrying goods to places I'd never been. Thomas Brennan had made good on his offer. I'd spent a year helping them restructure their strategic initiatives, building systems that would outlast any single person's tenure. It was satisfying work, the kind that used everything I'd learned without requiring everything I had. TechFront Solutions had been sold to a larger firm for $180 million. My 62% stake had netted me more money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to secure my future, invest in causes I believed in, and still have plenty left over. I donated $5 million to a foundation supporting children in foster care, kids who needed stability and someone to believe in them. Patricia had helped me set it up, making sure every dollar was tracked and used properly. You're building something good here, she'd said at the signing. That's how you know you've healed. When you can think beyond yourself. Rachel had called last week, told me Claire was working as a contract analyst for a small firm in Denver. Decent pay, no prestige, far from the spotlight she'd once craved. She asks about you sometimes. Rachel had said carefully. And you tell her what? That you're doing well. That you've moved forward. A pause. Have you? Moved forward. I'm getting there, I'd admitted. Some days are easier than others. The truth was complicated. I didn't miss Claire, didn't want her back, didn't spend nights replaying what could have been different. But I was wary now in ways I hadn't been before. Careful about trust, slower to believe in permanence. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Lunch next week? There's someone I want you to meet. Friend from law school, brilliant, funny, recently divorced herself. No pressure, just thought you two might enjoy conversation. I smiled, typed back. Maybe, let me think about it. Maybe it was progress. A year ago, I would have said no immediately, would have built walls too high for anyone to scale. Now I was willing to consider possibilities, even if I wasn't ready to commit to them. I looked out at the harbor again, watched a ship navigate toward open water. That's what I was doing, I realized. Not racing toward something new, but carefully navigating away from what had tried to sink me. And that was enough for now. The man I'd been when Claire left for that retreat, the one who'd believed trust was automatic and marriage was permanent, he was gone. In his place was someone stronger, more careful, but not broken. I'd learned that you could survive betrayal without becoming bitter, that strategic thinking wasn't the opposite of emotion, but sometimes its best expression, and that the most powerful revenge was simply living well. Claire had wanted to climb higher, to be someone important, to matter in ways that required audience and applause. She'd sacrificed everything real for something performative. I'd wanted something simpler, integrity, partnership, a life built on honesty. I still wanted those things. I just learned to be more careful about who I built them with. My phone buzzed again. Patricia, I'm taking your silence as a yes. Noon on Wednesday. You like her, Nathan. She's real. I looked at the message for a long moment, then typed, Wednesday works. Send me the details. And for the first time in 14 months, I felt something like hope.